Still party?
All right, it's 5 o'clock, time to start our study session. Summer, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Patterson?
Here.
Commissioner Norwood?
Here.
Commissioner Siragusa?
Here.
Commissioner Roberts?
Here.
Commissioner Stallings?
Here.
Commissioner Orr?
Here.
And Mayor Mason.
Here.
All present.
Item number 2, at the Commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern on the regular session agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to pull item 5, I believe it's 5.5, 7, and 8, and discuss it on housing.
Commissioner Norwood, I think you're specifically talking about item 5.7 on the Southern Heights overlay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and we can certainly talk about that. I know Leroy or myself or Scott can visit, but if you could just share some of your concerns. I know you would like to rezone part of it or all of it. If now would be a good use of study session time if you want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The desire for most of the my constituents in that area is to rezone the area from
All of it or a portion of it?
all of it.
Okay.
From 4.2 to R2, from R2 to R4.
Okay.
Just like the area in Ward 3 is, it's already been rezoned from R4. And what we're looking at is going from R2 to R4. And reason being is because R2 is just single family structures, and R4 is multi, and you can build duplexes. So what they're looking at is, instead of having to come up here and go through the process of having zoning done independently, they would like to just have it done overall, a blanket, to where if a person wants a single house dwelling or a multi-house dwelling, they can do that. They have the option. And that's what they desire as a whole. And when we had our town hall meeting, me and Commissioner Siragusa, I asked, those that desired that to raise their hands. And many of them did. They raised their hands because there are individuals who live outside of Enid that grew up in this community, and they were raised over in the Southern Heights, East Park Addition. And they want to invest back in their community. They have the money to be able to do it. I've been approached by different groups of individuals that are ready to do that, and they're looking at what we're doing. And once we put the water pipeline down there, that really helped them to make that decision because the infrastructure's there now. So they're ready to invest in the community themselves. So that's the reason why they would like to see a blanket done to where they don't have to go through the bureaucracy and all the red tape. It'll be taken care of from the beginning. And like I said, if they want to put a manufactured home down there or a duplex, stick built or whatever, it'll be available to them. And that's the reason why they desire this. And in our regular meeting, there will be different individuals that are going to come and they're going to speak on this item. One of them is going to be my dad, because he's planning to build his own house down there, him and my mother, and he's looking at doing some duplexes down there from the ground up. So I feel like if they're willing to put their money in it and invest back into the community, let's make it a smooth transition. We want to be user-friendly. Let's do it. Let's make a smooth transition to where people don't, feel discouraged. We want them to be encouraged to do that, to bring the area up. It's the most blighted area in Enid, and there's an old saying, your chain is no stronger than your weakest link. So let's strengthen that weak link. It's an area that's been blighted for a long time, and it's time to bring about change.
Why don't we talk about that a little bit? I know Leroy, I think we could, it would be nice if we pull up that overlay on your slides that shows the overlay we're talking about, and we could start there. We can figure out how we might be able to accomplish what you're talking about. I just want to say one thing that will impact our ability to do this is all those parcels are owned by individuals or companies. And typically on a rezoning, those individuals or companies, they're going to have to desire this. And if they do desire that, then certainly that makes it possible. So one of the things you and I had talked about is it might be easier to start with the folks that have vacant lots that want to build duplexes on them right now. So regardless of what happens or what you do tonight, if we could get that, that might help. But I think Leroy's prepared to generally talk about possibilities and maybe answer questions, but we're going to have to study this probably further.
And also, just quickly, I realize that we can send out a notice. I mean, we've sent out notices on other things that we wanted to do, you know, within a certain perimeter. We can send out notices to the public, and then we'll see what their responses are, and then we can, that's another option we have.
Well, part of the rezoning will be required to send out notices, and so we'll get the impact. But Leroy, why don't you generally try to answer the question or the thought about possibilities and see what we can contemplate tonight.
Maybe some discussion of overlay district. As you look at the Southern Heights overlay district right now, that entire area is R2. The overlay district does not control the underlying zoning. So if you were to adopt this overlay district tonight, if you rezoned any or all of this area R4, it would open the opportunities for the ability to build two-family or duplexes, whatever terminology, without any review. It would be a permitted use if it was rezoned. So adopting this overlay district tonight would not prohibit that. It would just change the underlying zoning. Then if you wanted to, so stick-built or modular duplexes, you could build without any kind of review. It would be a permitted use. If you wanted to do manufactured two-family residential manufactured units, then once it's rezoned or parts of it rezoned, we could come back and amend this overlay district to accommodate it, just like we allow the two-family residential manufactured homes in the Webster area overlay. But if we went ahead and adopted this tonight, those that wanted to put single-family manufactured homes in that area could go ahead and wouldn't have to wait for the process. And then once it's rezoned, whatever property's rezoned, again, the underlying zoning of any part of that area could be the controlling factor relative to stick-built or modular double wides or I'm sorry, duplexes or two-family. So I think we can accomplish what you want even if we adopt this tonight, because all we'll be doing is changing the underlying zoning that is underneath the overlay district. And then if you want to add the two-family residential manufactured homes, you're going to need some form of overlay district to do that. And it would just be simply, as we posted notices to rezone, we could post a notice to amend this ordinance to add those to the overlay district, where right now we're only allowing the single-family manufactured homes because of the underlying zoning. We would just come in and amend that overlay ordinance we're adopting tonight to add the two-family. I don't know if that answers questions or helps at all, but.
Why don't you explain the process? Because we can't rezone tonight. There's a process. Can you generally speak to the process to rezone
It-
R4 and what's generally required?
If the individual that owns the property or if the developer owns the property, it would be, I guess there could be two processes. If the property owners come forward, then they would make an application. It could be a group application. If a developer buys the property, a lot of times they buy it with an option to buy if it's rezoned. If they have an option and don't own it outright, then the buyer or developer would fill out the application, but then each individual owner would have to sign and agree to the rezoning because they still technically own the property. So you'll have a lot of different property owners you would be dealing with. Now, I think there's another process where you could put notice and the city could propose to rezone a large area, and that would be by notice, and we would have to notice all of the individual property owners that the city was considering a blanket rezoning of that area. And that could be done, and then you would post a notice, it would come to the planning commission for a hearing. So there's two ways. The city could propose a blanket rezoning of that entire area. And then we would have to do a notice to all of the property owners in that area that the city has proposed a blanket rezoning of that area. Or if you had developers and individuals say that wanted to do part of it, they could individually make applications. So there's two ways you could do it, but both of them, either way, will require the 20-day notice posted on the property, put in the paper, and notifying people within 300 feet, public hearing before the planning commission, and of course, then it would come forward to the governing body, the mayor and the board of commissioners to take final action on it.
So if they do it as an individual, if they have 6 lots and they want to rezone that, is there a fee that we charge for that to do?
Right now, there's a fee for rezoning. I don't know that we calculated that a fee that if you do multiple lots, I mean, it's one notice in the paper, one mailing, so I don't know that we would multiply the fee based on the number of lots. I don't know that our ordinance is set up that way.
Okay. And Commissioner, were you thinking about a blanket rezone? Or
This
an
is-
individual? I mean, which way do you want to go on that?
Yes, sir. It's not me personally. It's the individuals that are going to invest in this area. So I want to make that clear. I don't intend on building anything. I'm the voice of the people. There are families who would like to have a R4 blanket, Mayor, to make this simple. That's their desire. So I'm here as their voice to let the governing body know this is their desire. I know of at least 5 families that have the means to be able to make this happen. So those little vacant lots that people have been mowing for years, we're ready to see some houses built so we can create some revenue to be able to pay off this water pipeline and bring some businesses to Enid and workers to Enid. The big picture. So that's what we're looking at.
One thing I just want to say again, the blanket may be possible. I think we'd have to do some research. I can't think of a time maybe we've done a blanket area. My only caution is, I'm looking at how many lots there are. I'm going to say, I don't know, is there 75, something like that? If we're talking about doing a blanket 75 rezoning, these folks would have an opportunity to complain, or voice their opinions. But in the end, I don't know if we could legally do it, but if we could, I guess we could. But I think we're going to be cautious about changing the zoning for people that don't want to change the zoning. But I do hear what you're saying. A similar thing could be accomplished if there's 5 families that want to do something, that own property or are going to buy property. But I hear what you're saying. We certainly can explore it. But I want you to remember that, because R2 is the most restrictive housing out there. This, this area is different from Indian Hills, for instance, but I just want to let you know that. But it sounds like it might be possible to consider a blanket, but I think we would have to be cautious and get all the input, and in the end, I don't know if you have to have all the owners or not. We'd have to figure that out.
You don't have to have all the owners, but they have, it's a protest thing. Okay, if you wanted, the one easy thing is if you don't have a problem with, if the people who want the duplexes do not have a problem with residential manufactured homes, and they might want residential manufactured duplexes later if they get their blanket thing done, then the one thing you could suggest is that we strike out single family from permitted uses. Obviously, it would be single family is understood because we're talking about all properties that are R2. But if you then rezoned it, and I know you want it to be simple, if you then rezoned it, then if it just said residential manufactured home, then once it was rezoned, you could have residential manufactured duplexes and stick-built. That's about the, other than that, this doesn't really affect rezoning the property for duplexes.
Carol, what's the chance of the houses that are there being grandfathered into R2 and then the empty lots being put into R4?
In other words,
See, what I'm saying is
he's
wanting to bring in to be able to, on the empty lots,
Okay.
to do the duplexes.
Okay.
The
It
housing
is-
that's already there that's R2 can
Okay.
stay R2.
There's two concepts. You could do that if you've got the owners of, and it's a L, let's say, and all the owners are here and they want duplexes and there are two. If you don't do the blanket, usually it's, okay, we've got all these vacant lots and we want to do R2, and they would rezone it R4. And the people in the existing houses or the people that own the vacant lots could complain about it and defeat the rezoning or not. The thing is that sometimes people feel very protective of their R2 zoning, and they don't want duplexes, or for that matter, manufactured housing or modular housing or anything, other than exactly what they've got. But it's many ways.
If I might add to that, and I'm going off memory, and city attorney can correct me, but if you rezone that entire area to R4, single family is still a permitted use. So it
Yeah.
would not affect that. They wouldn't have to be grandfathered.
I
because
understand
it's
that,
still
but what I'm
permitted.
saying is if they want to remain R2 for their plot,
Then you just would not rezone that
that
particular
plot,
piece of property.
that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
That's what I
Now,
was
there
shooting
is
for. something
something called spot zoning, but, we've got overlays and we've got PUDs and stuff, and those are kind of, and I don't think that it really helps someone if they are in a sea of R4 and they're the only R2 that was not rezoned. I mean, I doubt that that really affects property values. But this can pass the way it is, and it's not going to affect rezoning, either blanket or little parts. This does not necessarily affect it. It just allows someone to put in a single-family residential manufactured home in R2 in the overlay district. And if you take out the words single-family, right now, it doesn't matter. I mean, initially when I did it, I had residential manufactured home. And then Leroy said, well, let's put single family because it's R2. But it would still be R2 as long as the underlinings, if we take out single family, you can't put in a duplex residential manufactured home unless you rezone the property.
The reason that we did that was to maintain the integrity of the underlying zoning, which has nothing to do with the request. That's why we put
Right.
single family versus,
Well, but residential
R2 is single
manufactured home would imply in R2, single residential
I hear what you're
manufactured
saying,
home.
yes.
But it would do the one thing that if all of a sudden it turned into R4, if for some reason all of it was R4, then you would be able to have duplex residential manufactured homes without going in and changing it. But you'd probably want to change part of it anyway. Okay.
To follow up more on your question, if I own a piece of property in that area zoned R2 and it's changed to R4, it gives me more options on that property when I want to sell it later. The reason I might be against the rezoning the entire area is not the effect on my property, but the opportunity for someone to put duplexes on the properties adjacent to my property if I didn't want to live next door to duplexes. So that might be why they would be against the rezoning, not that it affects their particular lot, because it just gives them more options. But you're opening it up for the neighbors across the street and on both sides of them to build duplexes. And if they don't want to live in a neighborhood full of duplexes, that might be why they would speak out against it, not what the impact is on their particular property. I hope I explained that clearly.
Darwin, I'm interested now to know how you feel about that. What do you think the folks in your neighborhood want?
They want the R4 blanket so that they don't have to go through all of the processes. They just want a solid, they want to mirror what we've learned about, was it the
Webster Park.
Webster Park? That's their desire, is to mirror Ward 3 in Webster Park. And they know that if we have an R4 blanket, that gives them opportunity to make choice on what type of house they would like to build, whether it's manufactured, stick build, whether it's single home or multifamily home. They just want the opportunity to be able to do that. And they also realize that as you continue to build up the neighborhood and the community, you bring value to that community. And there's different communities. You have communities where you can go to Dallas, Texas, and there's tract homes. Every 5 homes are the same, but a window and a garage is switched around, and you see that. But then you can go out to some areas, and they're custom-built homes. So I don't think anyone has a problem with having a duplex right next to them. I think a duplex beats a vacant lot all day long. And I don't believe anyone's going to complain, because the people are hungry for change, and they want to be able to go to the bank and say, hey, I'd like to build this house. And when the bank looks at the value of that area, they can be approved, because why? There are houses there that holds value. That's the desire, to build the community back up. So if you have groups of individuals that want to build up that community, let's make it a smooth transition to where they will be able to do that without a lot of bureaucracy and red tape involved in it. Let's just go ahead and mirror Ward 3 and get it done. I mean, I hear us say, well, I don't know if we can. We can do what we want to do. We're the governing body. We have a process. As long as we abide by the law, we can make this happen. We're not asking for anything. We have individuals that want to invest their own money. It's time.
I think, so I would support a blanket rezoning. I think for tonight, I think what Carol was saying was
Yes.
that we can go ahead and approve everything as it is tonight, maybe take out the one word as single-family home, but still approve it, and then revisit rezoning the entire area of the blanket at a later date.
And
Exactly.
I'm tracking, that's exactly right. And Commissioner, I think, I was at that same meeting you obviously were at on that first town hall, and I saw all the hands go up as well. So I absolutely have no problems with changing that, making that easier, to make it more like Webster, what's it? Webster's. Yeah. And I don't really care whether we do a blanket. If that's what you want to do, I'm fine with that. If we want to try to do the individuals, I can kind of see it both ways. But I think maybe what we need to do, and what I'm hearing, is let's discuss this and decide if you want to do a blanket, where does the line go? Is it just inside the yellow line? Are we out farther than that? I think they're going to have a definition, probably, right?
Everything on the west side of that is already R4.
Right.
Everything
Some of it's
west of
already-
that.
I can't see it up
Everything
there,
west
so.
of that line on the west side.
So we're talking about what's inside of that
What's inside
area.
of that area.
Okay.
So part of the area, that community is already R4 and C3.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So,
I'm not opposed to
And
that.
I'm not opposed to what we have on the
We can't
agenda.
make a decision on the blanket thing here or tonight.
Tonight.
Right,
The
right.
question is, do we alter it a little bit to maybe make it easy? Or do we just pass this, or do we table it? That's all that we've
So
got.
what's the gain on taking that out? You said it doesn't really change whether there be a
Okay.
duplex.
Okay. See, okay, I guess part of it is, we've got this overlay that allows for residential manufactured housing in the overlay. And the way it's written, it only allows single-family residential manufactured homes. Okay,
Which is R2's.
right.
And
If you just said residential manufactured homes, it's still going to be single-family residential manufactured homes until the blanket happens. And then when the blanket happens, then
We wouldn't have to go back and
you
change
don't
the
have to.
overlay.
Exactly.
However,
Yes.
Okay.
if you were going to rezone it, you'd probably go ahead and rezone it, and at the same time anticipate that. So it's probably a distinction without a difference. If you're going to rezone this whole thing R4, then you would just notice the whole thing and then notice for a revised Southern Heights residential manufactured housing overlay and take out the R2.
I would have one slight variation from what the city attorney suggested for consideration. On page 1 of the ordinance for Southern Heights, at the bottom where it says permitted uses, single-family residential manufactured home, I would suggest we put single-family or two-family residential manufactured home dependent upon the underlying zoning. And that way, if it's rezoned to
That's fine.
R4, the underlying zoning would allow the duplex residential manufactured homes. If it stays R2, we're good either way, but it's clear that it is dependent on the underlying zoning.
That's great.
Can we add that tonight and still vote on it?
Yes.
You would make a
Would you be
motion to
okay
approve it
all
with an
that?
amendment.
And then we come back and we do the rezone the whole area, or attempt to. I mean, we've got to go through the process, take 40-plus days, put up signage. You open yourself up, there could be people that are against it.
Well, there will be people. And I'm not trying to throw water on it, but I've never seen anything be unanimous. But I think what we'll do based on what you're saying and the action that you may take tonight, we'll start studying right away a blanket rezone of that district to R4.
But if you adopt this ordinance with that amendment,
Yeah.
that single-family or two-family residential manufactured home dependent upon the underlying zoning, then if you rezone all of it, you don't have to come back and amend this ordinance. You can do the double-wide or the two-family residential manufactured homes because the underlying zoning has changed.
That seems a better approach.
That's good.
Go ahead and improve the overlay, because then the rezoning would have to happen whether it's blanket or individual properties, and it's going to take the same amount of time however we do it. So, and then people could go ahead and do, if they wanted to do anything now with those vacant lots.
And Leroy,
Okay.
with what you said, it could still be stick-built. You said manufactured, but
All this does is allow the residential manufactured home. If it's rezoned, modular and stick can go in there as duplexes because you've changed the zoning. You can't do any duplexes there in this area right now because it's not a permitted use at all because it's not zoned R4. But once you rezone it, then duplexes that are stick-built or modular homes will be a permitted use. With this change, then it would also allow the duplex manufactured homes, or what we, in our
Single-
zoning ordinance call
single
two-family.
families.
Single family or,
Well, if
Two-family.
it gets
Unless underlying
blanketed,
zoning
then
change.
single
Unless the
family or,
underlying zoning
yeah.
has changed.
yeah. Right now, until the zoning, underlying zoning, they would only be able to do the single-family residential. But once the zoning changed, and then that would be applicable if you ended up doing half of the area instead of all of it, that would make this ordinance applicable. Say if the northern half changed to R4, then you could do both single-family and two-family residential manufactured homes. And then if the southern half stayed R2, you would only be able to do the single-family residential because it's dependent upon the underlying zoning.
That's a good approach. It solves your thing of having to keep coming back all the time. You try for your blanket. Meanwhile, we've solved it so that if you get it, you can do either type of duplexes. And if you don't, people can start using residential manufactured homes in a month.
Yeah, I'm not against the overlay. I never have been against the overlay. That's not the issue. I just have constituents who want to make sure that they're able to do stick-built duplexes or multifamily housing if that's what they desire to do. I've
And
never been against the
that would
overlay.
require rezoning, as you indicate.
Right, so
But-
that's
but this
why the
way,
zoning came up.
With that one change in the Southern Heights overlay district, if you rezone part or all of this, you don't have to come back later and amend this overlay district. It is set up to be applicable based on the underlying zoning within that overlay district. So all you have to do is rezone, and then you're done. You don't have to come back and amend this ordinance.
Okay.
I understand it. I get it.
Okay.
You know, I was just speaking for my constituents.
And again, we're not speaking against the mission or the direction you want to go. We're just trying to touch this up to accommodate where you want to go.
Anybody else, any of the commissioners want to
I
make
have a question. On 6.15, we had some contracts for mowing awarded, not necessarily to the lowest bidder. Williams Mowing, I think was their name, was the lowest bidder, but they were excluded.
Is it, can you pull up, in that attachment, Ken, I think there may be a canvas of bids. I guess I could pull it up on my, but if you, yeah, perfect. I don't know if it was Williams. I can't see right there. I do know that Justin's
I thought that was
Justin's
it. Yes,
Mowing.
that was him.
The problem with Justin's Mowing, they were the lowest on one or two of the areas, but the problem was a conflict of interest with Justin. He's getting ready to marry one of our city employees.
Okay.
And therefore, that's a conflict of interest that would be a violation of our personnel manual and I think our purchasing procedures. So that's why we have let the employee know and Justin know. So I think they're aware why they're not the lowest. So I think we chose the next lowest, which was Blizzard, on there.
And I do know they're aware of it, I'm just not sure they're in agreement with the decision that was made based on the fact that they're not yet married. And so I was wondering what the policy is.
Well, is Justin's service company wholly owned by Justin?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess until they're married, there isn't a problem. The only thing is that this is for a year, and how long?
18 months.
Okay, so how long is their engagement going to be? I mean, are they planning to get married very soon?
I don't know that.
The thing is that he would have to give up the contract once they're married. It's not a rule that I particularly like, but it's in the statutes.
Okay.
But you make a good point, and
Because things happen and they may not get married, you just never know. So I.
True enough, and right now he could start doing
I just
it.
wondered what the policy was, so.
and he is the low bid. I mean, for at least one of the items. So I actually didn't have time. I wondered what the conflict was, but I didn't ask about it. But yes, until he's married.
And
Now,
we didn't ask you about it either because we just read our policy. And so you're right, it is a difficult situation. When I spoke to the employee and I did ask, when are you getting married? And she didn't know. So is it possible? Yes. I didn't speak directly to Justin, but the city clerk did. And so
okay,
I
now
did not hear any pushback
here's the
from
one
the
thing that I
employee,
would
but
say.
I understand.
Sure.
If it
it's a
was,
perception.
instead of an employee and a contractor, if somebody told me that they were engaged to be married, if one of you was engaged to be married and their contract was on the agenda, I would say you need to not vote on it because, affairs of the heart. But, this is different because it's an employee who's not a decision maker on this. And you bring up a good point. It's fascinating and would make a good law question on the bar exam.
It would, because if you drill deeper into it, I don't know if they live in the same residence. I don't think state of Oklahoma is a common law state. I don't know.
It is a
when you
common law
consider
state,
people
but
married.
if they are saying they're engaged, they're not married yet.
Yes, okay.
Because
So-
common law says you have to hold yourself out, like on taxes, doing a joint return, or by saying, and if you're
Yes.
saying, I'm going to get married, that doesn't mean common law marriage has attached.
So I think what the city attorney is saying is that you could award it to Justin's, but I think we would need to either put them on notice. If we're going to try to follow our policy with conflict of interest, we'd have to put them on notice, and then we're going to have to constantly, we're not going to be the police to go out and see if they're married or living together or whatever. In my opinion, if we award it to them, I'm not going to worry about it. We're going to move on, and then we'll deal with it when it's time to award it again. So I would say it's a bit frustrating that I didn't talk to Justin. I talked to the employee, but the employee did not. Maybe they wouldn't tell me that they're unhappy about it. I don't like being in those positions either, but I'm also trying to keep us
Safe.
following our conflict. And there's all kinds of conflict rules, Carol, as you and I have talked about.
Absolutely.
And there's conflicts between the Constitution and title, whatever it is you
Yes.
say. And so, having said that, I will watch and see what happens tonight when you guys make a motion on this.
Okay.
Is it in, it sounds like it's in consent too, so you probably need to pull it out.
It is,
and
yeah,
vote
it is in
separately.
consent.
And we're fine with whatever you approve.
Okay.
Any other
Maybe-
comment before I move on? All right. Item number 3.1, discuss severe weather disaster response plans. I have asked Mike Honingsberg, did I say it right?
Honingsberg.
Okay. And let me just set it up why he's here. I was at a conference not too long ago, and at the end of that conference, they had a round table of all these mayors and started talking about what do you do when you have these disaster storms come through. We've been very fortunate. You and I had that conversation that we have not had that. What I heard from two different mayors were that the best laid plans fall apart sometimes. And one of the mayors down at Midwest City was telling me that at one time they had 13 of their response vehicles on the side of the road with flat tires that they hadn't thought about. Their communications, how they deal with that. You know, you don't just pick up the cell phone when the tower's out. So there's a lot of additional questions that I started thinking about, and that's when I started talking to Gerald and I said, just how prepared are we for this? I know we're towards the end of the season now, but it'll come around again, and we all know that. And Mike, what you told me was how many years we'd gone without a direct hit, which being in the insurance business just tells me we're closer to the next one. You know, so that being said, that's why I asked him to come up here and kind of go over some of this. And so you guys, ladies and gentlemen, could ask questions and just make sure we're where we need to be. I've asked Gerald to make sure that the cities where they need to be, that we have vehicles that can go out and change tires and fix tires, and that's something I wouldn't have thought about. So with that being said, that's why I asked Mike to be here, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you very much for showing up, for putting this together.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me, and I'll try to answer everybody's questions if you have any when we get through this presentation. Tonight's discussion, of course, is tornadoes. They're one of the most destructive things that we have to deal with here in Oklahoma. And if you look at this video, you see doesn't look like it's a real big tornado. It's really wound up, and it's picking up a lot of debris, tearing up trees. And of course, if it's going through a residential area, it's going to be tearing up houses. And because of that, we have a big concern even here in Enid as far as that goes. Tornadoes, violently rotating column of air in contact with the ground. If you watch the drama on TV, a funnel forms and everybody goes crazy. And so, you know, it's not a tornado yet until it gets in contact with the ground. And that's a condensation funnel. It's not, initially, it's not dirt and stuff being pulled up until after it's been on the ground just a little bit. So here's another video. And I use these videos in our spotter classes, which I teach. And just watch this real closely. It's going to hit a structure just on the other side of the road here. And watch real closely. You'll see a little bit of debris right in there because it got some bushes. Here goes some more debris, and then right there. Tears it up and then pulls it toward them. As a responder, our hearts are such to where if we see this happen, our first reaction is just to rush in there and check and see how people are. You know, see if they're hurt or whatever. We got to hesitate because of what's going to be falling out of the sky. Some of these TV shows and movies and stuff they have out there, you know, depict everybody rushing in there real quick. They don't really show what reality is all about. And that's what this is. I wanted to put that in there just to kind of give you that perspective. And there it is again. Okay, spring of 1966, we had a tornado in the northeastern part of town. This picture is on the wall at the National Weather Service down there in Norman. And that's pretty much what it looked like right there. I think if I remember correctly, and it may be in the stats of the paperwork that you all were given, I believe on that particular storm there were 2 or 6 people hurt in this particular one. And so, you know, tornadoes do hit Enid. The Indian legend states, you know, Enid will never get hit. I heard that a long time ago that there was a legend about that. I don't think it's really active per se. And of course, they're number one in destruction, and it's not a game. This picture, again, most of these pictures I do use in my spotter classes and stuff. A lot of people think it's fun to go storm chase and all this other until they see pictures like this and pictures like that. When you get into total destruction and that kind of thing, to even see people walking around after something like this is just unbelievable, really. And, this could happen here. And so I have devised in time an exercise with police and fire, and the colonel surprised me the other day when he came out there to my office. I didn't realize he was a wing commander. It just didn't click with me. And they want to be involved in this too. So I don't know if you wanted to destroy part of the base too, or just be a part of the response to come up here. Both, okay. Well, that's going to open up some more bag of worms there too, but that's okay. We'll make it happen and we'll work through it. So I'm going to bypass this slide. I mean, I'm involved with everybody from the state, local, and federal level in what I do, and I oversee a lot of different things, and I mean, that's what 29 years in emergency management has done for me. So what's my job? My job is to prepare for, respond to, mitigate from, and help in the recovery process if we ever have a major disaster. I think everybody will remember the flood of '73. For those of you that lived here at that time, I was in college at Northwestern and came over with the National Guard because they needed medics. And so we came over, and I've lived here all my life, and I had never seen cars and trees before. That was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. And I couldn't really fathom mentally how much water came through the Brookside area at that time. But we mitigated a lot of that problem by widening and deepening channels. Now, can that happen again? Yeah, if we get more rain in the right place. But at least we've taken the steps to, take care of that particular problem. Tornadoes in Garfield County since 1950. This is on the National Weather Service's site. These are just paths and stuff right here. And I think you can all have some handouts with all of those in there. Then we'll talk about how many have actually hit within the city limits. And of course, these were back through 2023, so we'll be adding 4 more from this year to this particular picture here in the county, and after they get the new maps and stuff taken care of. So how many possible hits within the city limits here for Enid? We've had 9 since 1950 within the city limits. So to my knowledge, there's been no deaths, but there again, just need to look at more data. And the way they did a lot of I lost the word. A lot of their assessments back in the day wasn't as efficient as it is now. So, because I get GPS and they mark where trees are and where certain debris has fallen, and just everything in there. If there was people unfortunately killed or whatever, those are all GPSed in there too. And the data is just so much better now than what it was back then. So, of course, you've got the handouts and all, so you can look through those. And if anybody has any questions about those even after this, just feel free to contact me if we need to get together and talk. That's not a problem. Or even if you have a question, through the rest of this right here. Back in May and April, we ended up in a high risk for severe weather. That's what the color picture is here. Your purple is the high risk, your red is your moderate risk, your kind of yellowish brown right there is your enhanced, and then you have your slight and your marginal, and then your general thunderstorm risk. On these days that we had the tornadoes earlier this year, in April and in May, when we went through our briefings with the National Weather Service, they said it doesn't make any difference where you are in any of these categories. If a severe storm goes up, it will be tornadic. And we all got a little jumpy because this happened within just a few weeks of each other when we had these different storms. When Hillsdale got hit up there, and then when we had the tornadoes through Bison and the Douglas and south of Covington area. So, it did pose a heart failure for some of us out there, but we made it through it, and everything worked out because of that. And this is just another picture of the high risk for that day that the Storm Prediction Center puts out. So, when I really pay a lot more attention from the slight risk on up. Not that it doesn't make any difference on the lower risks. It's just that when conditions are at this level, bad things can happen. And that's just a picture of a moderate risk, because that's how we were early on May 6th in the morning, and then they increased that to a high risk about mid-morning. And that's just a picture from my cell phone of a radar program that I have that I use to monitor stuff if I'm not near our weather center up there at the office. A lot of people have these weather programs on their phones. They don't really know how to read radar. I've got 29 years doing that. And I'm not an expert per se, because, it's always changing. But, I just use this particular program because it's very detailed, and that's what we got to have to do what I do. The Hillsdale tornado, it severely damaged a home up there this year, and did a lot of damage on a second home. It actually bent the house in. It actually kind of curled it to where the roof, was bowed up, and they rated that one an EF1. So, looks like a gigantic tornado, but keep in mind, tornadoes are the wind, not the cloud, so to speak. So, the wind within the main core. So, that's kind of how that looks. And then it's kind of hard to see, and it's real hard to see up there with the lights. This is the wall cloud. This picture was taken by the Pioneer Fire Chief of the wall cloud that was moving towards the Douglas area that night. It was right over the Bison area when he took this particular picture. Storm assessments, I helped the National Weather Service do that too. I've been with Doug Spieger. He's one of their warning forecasters down there. I've gone with him for years to do assessments and stuff. So I did the Hillsdale assessment for him. Then, of course, they were down in the southern part of the county for the storms that hit the Bison area. And, of course, it was over there in the Lacey area, too, and then over there in the Douglas, Covington area. And they like to get those storm tracks. Very important. Storm sirens, we have 40 sirens. Half of them now are voice capable, so we can talk over them. If we lose all of our communications, if cell phones don't work, if something were to happen even to our, even our repeater systems, it doesn't make any difference really, but we can talk over these sirens. So where our people, after a very damaging event, they're outside. So we can actually talk to them and give them instruction if we need to. And we have a device that has that capability both at the police department and up at my office. And of course, preparedness, and I'm just going to briefly hit this, in emergency services, this is our preparedness cycle. We plan, see how that works. Push that, no. Sorry, I'll go back. It's not working. Well, anyway, I guess you didn't need to know about the preparedness cycle. Can you go back on that? There we go. Anyway, we plan, we organize, we train, we equip if we feel that we have to have certain equipment because we don't have it. And then we exercise it. And then after the exercise, we evaluate what we did, what we discussed, and that kind of thing. And then we take corrective action, and then we pick something else. And we go through the process over and over and over again. I think Fire Chief here could tell you that they train all the time. Police department trains all the time. We train all the time. So this is just kind of the way it works for us. And of course, a lack of preparedness is what I call your fault. People want to know if we're ready. Okay? I want to know, are you ready? Because we can be as ready as we can possibly be. And then the people, because they weren't ready, gripe at us because they weren't ready. So, and this is a good slide. It's his fault, her fault, their fault, whoever. It's never the person's fault. And in this case, you're wanting to know where we are. We're going to get to that here very shortly. We have a spotter network in our county that I would put up against anybody in this country. It consists of Enid Police. Gary, I don't know if... do we still have 10 officers at least? Okay. The rural fire departments, we have over 130 firefighters that have trained through our spotter network. And of course, we utilize sheriff's deputies. And people ask, well, how come I don't have any civilians in there? Civilians aren't the most reliable people when you really need them out there. And plus, we can talk to each other. Now, you notice Enid Fire's not on there. They're usually out on a lightning strike or a structure fire or accident because they shouldn't have been out there in the first place during really bad weather. So, Sometimes the stations will call if they happen to be in-house, and they'll call and let us know what's going on and what they're seeing. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
No. I
Okay,
was
not a problem.
Just thinking.
And of course, looking at radar, I'm seeing this, and our people in the field are seeing that. So, and these spotters that we have out there, a lot of these folks have been with me for 25 plus years. And, I use this analogy. These guys have the credibility with me that if they told me Godzilla was walking across the back 40, I would believe them. And I mean, that's just the credibility these folks have with us. Okay, so let's get down to the nitty gritty. We take a major hit, now what? Okay? If you look real close at the picture, and it may be hard to see up there because of the light, you see two firefighters in a mass of debris. Have any of you all been or walked through an area that's been totally destroyed by a tornado? Okay, so you know what that looks like. So basically, what our spotters will do at that point, they become a responder at that particular point if they're close to an area that's been hit. They'll assess what's going on, and then they'll implement search and rescue and recovery operations through our incident command system, and then they'll inform us of their needs and whatever mutual aid they feel that we need to have. So 9 times out of 10, the people who are going to be in charge of the incident will be the fire department. And so they'll get out there, they'll let us know what they need, and then we just kind of go from there. Law enforcement will be out there doing their thing. I know we have a drone or two. Does that have night vision on it too? Okay. So if we have a storm hit at night during the assessment process, at least we can see where all that damage is, get a pretty good idea. Okay, so how do we proceed? The most important group that we have with the city of Enid that we're going to need if we ever take a major hit is Public Works. Because they're the ones that are going to be clearing the streets. That will help hopefully alleviate a little bit of the flat tire situation. But as we discussed, having those magnets, they're not that expensive really, hanging from the, bumpers of some of the pickups and stuff out there, they could just drive slowly through there and pick up whatever metal debris, mainly nails, out of the roads will help mitigate the problem of the flat tires. Because that's going to be a problem for everybody, here, anywhere. That's what one of the big problems was down in Moore. Gary, did you guys have a problem down in Moore with flat tires?
We didn't, we were down there now.
Okay, where you all were, you didn't have that problem? Okay, all right. That's one question I hadn't asked you before. So anyway, we follow the incident command system structure. On a daily basis, you have a command person and single resources, ambulance, police, fire, and that's just a typical daily call. Okay? Then if we take a hit, we'll have what we call area command and several other incident command posts out there. And those will, just depending on how big the situation is, will be how this would all be set up. And I'm not going to go into each one of the little boxes and stuff on here because it gets complicated, and that actually is a day-long class for each one. So then if we took the major hit, if we took a Moore level hit here in Enid, this is what would happen. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, is this something we can handle by ourselves? No. No jurisdiction, no matter how big, would be able to handle a catastrophic tornado like this. We would initially have our rural departments come in, coordinate with fire and police, and get it set up however it needs to be. We have surrounding county people that would come in to help us out too. The state will already know we're taking a hit, but they'll also be in communication with my office, and I'm going to be screaming for help. They'll send incident command teams up here and whatever else we need. And I mean, the whole Army is going to probably be here to help us out. So that's going to include all the NGOs out there like Red Cross, Salvation Army, Baptist Men's Group, and just countless others that would come up to give us a hand, because there will be thousands of people here to help us get through this. So that's where this chart here comes into play, and it'll be very complicated. The exercise that I was telling you about, I'll just say it, I'm going to destroy part of Enid with this, and the wing commander has stated he wants to play too. So we're going to destroy part
Now,
of the
I was
base.
going to mention when you asked the colonel if if he wanted you to tear up the base also.
He
It
asked
was an
me.
exercise. is what-
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. I didn't know if the. Okay.
Yeah, exercise only. Yeah, that would be that'd be a federal crime for us to go out there and tear up the base. So, and I don't know all the procedures that are involved in how that would work. So I've got some research to do. But I'll be getting with police and fire because I'm looking at probably late October to do this exercise. And a lot of people look at an exercise as something that you either pass or fail. I'm wanting to have a large event exercise so we can sit down and discuss how we're going to approach this. Does everybody know what we're going to have to do? Right now, they have an idea, but everybody on the fire department, everybody on the police department, everybody at the base is going to know what we're going to do. Because I want input from all of them because it's going to take all of us to get through it. You all too. So, it's going to be a massive undertaking, but it's something I think we need to do. In talking with Galen Kitch down at Moore, he's their EM. He and I went through the same weather training and stuff, back in 1997. So we talked at length about what he had to go through down there, and he said it was a nightmare all 3 times. But each tornado did more destruction each time it occurred. And the last one was the devastating one. I mean, the really bad one. And so, it just has gotten to the point where it's time that we actually sit down and work through this and come up with some solutions on here. But like I said, Public Works is going to be one of those most important groups out there because they're going to have to clear the roads so they can be traveled to get to wherever we need to go to take care of our people.
Hey, Mike, I appreciate that slide there. Gerald and I had an excellent presentation just last month where at least I didn't realize all of the help and resources that OEM and Homeland would throw in if we had something major. And that was a relief to me just to know that there's big resources out there ready to help us if something happens.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to do it all on our own.
Exactly. Well, I don't think we could do it on our own. I mean, as much as we would try, it's not like the volcano in Los Angeles with Tommy Lee Jones, taking care of everything, out there all by himself. It doesn't work that way. We all work as a team. We have to because, it's just the way it goes. I mean, they may see something I don't and vice versa, and that's how it works. And it takes all of you all too for the bigger decisions because you technically have the responsibility for the event. So, it's just something that we'll work through and we'll hopefully come up with some good protocols on that. And Homeland Security and State OEM will be here for this exercise too, to give us their input on what they can bring to the table, with incident management teams and that kind of thing too. So communications, they will be affected, but if our repeater networks are wiped out, chances are not all the repeaters in the county will be wiped out. And so, at the county level, we've got, I think, 9 repeaters. We have 4 around the county and the rest of them are here in town, that we utilize for countywide call outs and that kind of thing. The city's tower, we're not destroying that in this exercise or ours. So, I didn't want to really make it real bad, but most likely we'll be using what we call simplex frequencies, just radio to radio. And I actually talked with Homeland Security today about that on what additional frequencies we could use, but there's a lot of coordination and licensing that we have to go through to get a lot of those. So we're going to have to get creative in how we're going to do this so that one area over here with search and rescue going on doesn't conflict with another area over here if we have to utilize the same frequencies in different areas. So, it's kind of complicated, but we'll get through it. So how do you receive information? And of course, the little slide with the old guy on TV going crazy, that's the weather people in Oklahoma City. So, and I'm not real big on that, but I'm not going to mention stations, but just be careful about the information that they give to you. We have our City Connect app. I don't know how many people are on that yet. Of course, there's a lot of news and weather apps out there. We have ours, and I'll show that one to you here in a minute. Local radio stations. I go live on Facebook on storms. This is the first year I actually stayed live during the tornadic weather, and got a lot of good things, but I also found out people can hear what people say on my cell phone too, and it's not the one that we're using on Facebook. So we had some very colorful language on there for a little while. When you see people, we can hear Cody. You know, we kind of knew to back off just a little bit on that. But anyway, in my opinion, there's no excuse for not knowing what's going on. And on one of these days, on any tornadic day especially, you know, I'll be putting out emails to you all. We'll be putting it out over the apps, and we coordinate with the radio stations. Alan Klepper said from KOFM that he would come down to the office and just do live from there, but there wasn't time on some of this, you know, to where he could get down there to us on when a couple of these things occurred. So, you know, it's just kind of the way it works. So on our Garfield County EM app, we've had that app for about 10 years, and we've got over 21,000 downloads on it. And I don't know how many people get our information whenever we send out information on this. That's not one of the things I required to know, but it's there. National Weather Service warnings and advisories automatically come through this. That's the one thing that we really liked about this app. And so that happened for us about 6 years ago. And that saves me a lot of time in having to see the warning and then retype it or copy and paste it, put it in there and send it out, which is the way we used to have to do it. Any questions?
What about those who have tornado shelters? Is there a registry that you have?
Yes, we have a shelter registration program, and just like I've told those people when they've put that into the system, we'll get there as soon as we can get there, but there are restrictions depending where the damage is. Now, that information is not on the trucks right now, and it's not even at the police department. It's on the website, you know, on our county website right now, and I can pull that information into an Excel file, or actually a KMZ file, and send it to them, and it works with Google Earth. Then they can bring that up on Google Earth and put their cursor on that particular house, and it tells them exactly where the shelter is, what the coordinates are for it, the whole 9 yards. And then if worst comes to worst, we can also get information from the assessor's office.
How can we check to see if we're on that registry or not?
Just call me.
Okay.
We don't allow the public to get into that because a lot of people put their information in there and they don't want it shared. I mean, I guess they just don't want people showing up at their house. You know, I can understand that to a point, but I told them that we wouldn't make it public unless we're made to make it public. So that's where we are on that one.
Other questions or comments?
I just want to say I really appreciate the app. It works really well, and even if you're in another state or city and you're experiencing bad weather there, you can go onto the radar map on this site and find out what's going on where you are, and it's very helpful.
Right.
No matter where you are.
And if you're somewhere and you're nervous about the weather and you can't get the information, just call me. I've got access to everything. So, you know, a lot of people have done that in the past. So, and I don't mind.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for being here. That's very helpful. You went over all this with me the other day, and it made me feel a lot better. Those were a lot of concerns I had, you know, just, I thought we would be prepared, but where do we stage? How do we know to go there? I mean, those were just all those questions. I was also concerned about Vance. If you remember, we talked about that. Colonel, I appreciate you take the initiative to make sure that's included. You guys have resources, probably we don't, and vice versa, but hopefully we would never both take a hit at the same time. And we just need to, I'm glad in October we're going to include the base, because we need to work out, when you said a while ago, I don't know the procedure to get on the base or how that all works, it needs to be worked out today, not whenever everything's come apart.
Well, see, and in this exercise, we're going to have a lot of destruction here. They're going to have destruction out there. How's that going to work? You know, I mean, I'm not real sure, because we're going to be overwhelmed. They're going to be overwhelmed.
I don't know. That's why we hire you.
There you go. And that's what we're going to find out.
Okay.
And just always remember this too. On any day, the response that fire and police do, or even me, is the same. A call comes in. We're given this is what's going on. A response is sent. Okay. In this particular situation, the response is always going to be the same until we get on scene. Then, because no two structure fires are the same, no two accidents are the same, no plane crashes are the same. It just depends what's going on, where it is how we're going to deal with it.
I just always want to make sure that we are prepared enough that we give every one of our citizens the best chance of survival after something like that.
Right.
So I like the fact that you plan, you exercise, you plan again, and you exercise again. I don't think we can ever do enough of that. So thank you so much. If there's no other questions, we'll let you go, and I look forward to October.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
All right.
Thank you all. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. All right. Well, let me change papers. That being said, I think that is all we had on our study session. We will adjourn and start our regular scheduled meeting at 6:30. We are adjourned.